Welcome back to a very special episode of Future Dreamers. I'm really excited to get into this episode today because this is an update. This episode is an update on the Scorpio transformation spell that I initiated myself into at the beginning of November when the moon was new in Scorpio. So we just finished Aquarius season, and I kind of meant to record this 2 weeks ago, but life was lifing. And so this update is we are in the square of the spell. And if you were on my email list at the time, then you got this Scorpio transformation spell delivered to your email. And sometimes I do that. So that's another cool reason to get on my email list, is because I send out spells, specifically astrological spells. And so I'm going to take you through an update of where I am personally as I work through this tenuous period. Because if you are into astrology, then you know that the square phase, the square aspect, is traditionally talked about as kind of a hard aspect. But really, it's a beautiful place of building tension. It's a crisis of building the dream. It's where you push off from the past and unhook all of your limiting beliefs that are telling you don't want to move away from your comfort zone. And you say, but I've got to move away from my comfort zone if I'm going to build something completely new in this world. And so that's where I am. But to kind of like set the stage for how this spell came to be, why you should even be interested in doing astrological magic, I want to kind of go a little bit deeper first into, what am I trying to teach you with my account? What am I hoping to initiate you into as I initiate myself into learning more about how you can use astrology for personal transformation? Because that is what, if you have downloaded my app Starlight, if you've used any of my free tools or my Hero Story Birth Chart Self-Discovery Kit, then you know that my passion is astrology for personal evolution, not astrology for just reading it on the internet and, buying into other people's fear-based predictions of what global transits are going on. That's kind of not what you're going to get here. What you're going to get here is someone who is deeply in the river. What you're going to get here is someone who is deeply in the river of learning how to use astrology for the transformation of my own consciousness. And I'm using every tool that I know how to use to create things that will help you do the same thing in a lot less time than it has taken me. I just have a lot of animals, you know what I mean? So my animals just love to make noises while I am trying to record podcasts. So if you hear Teddy in the background, that is just Teddy being a Teddy. But anyway, astrology for personal evolution and astrology for transforming your consciousness. That is really what I am deeply passionate about. The last episode of Future Dreamers I talked about how the moon is this initiatrix that helps us understand cycles. And astrology is all about understanding cycles, birth to growth to death to rebirth. And another thing that astrology is just a masterful system of understanding is how to ride the time wave, because astrology is a map of the time wave. If you have ever seen, and I'll try and link this in the show notes, if you have ever seen one of the computer generated graphical models that they have on YouTube of how all of the planets are swirling around our sun and the sun is blasting through the universe, through the galaxy, circling the center of our galaxy. It's this beautiful, fascinating model that shows us that we are in this galactic cycle of time. One swinger of the sun around the galaxy takes 230 million years, and it's called a galactic year. So crazy, so fascinating to understand that we as humanity are wrapped up within that story of our own solar system's evolution through archetypal time. And so, and another really interesting thing, I'm going to do a whole episode on what is astrology really at its core, and why does it work? Because I think that that is something that's really fundamental to get into, so that you can actually understand what you're doing when you use astrology. And if you hear my cats beefing in the background, it's because, as someone who lives on a ranch, apparently every cat in the county has heard that I have a Chewy subscription, and they show up to my house, and then some of them don't like each other, and they make meow catty noises when I'm trying to record a podcast, and I'm going to be too lazy to delete this. So you just might hear them being crazy in the background. But again, so I'll do a whole nother episode on what is astrology and how can you just fundamentally understand its mechanics, so that you can feel a lot more embodied as you learn to use it in your own life, which is everything I'm trying to teach you, how to use it in your own life. And how am I doing that? Well, I'm showing you how I'm using it in my life. And so, if you hear people talk about things like the Schumann resonance, the Hertz frequency that the Earth produces, every planet has its own frequency. And so that means that truly we are living in a symphony of planets. Astrology has often been referred to as how you understand the music of the spheres, the music of the planets. And when you look at a representation of the frequency of those planets as they move through space, as they move around the sun, and the sun is moving through the galaxy, what it produces is like this beautiful time wave. It's a wave of frequency that is moving through time. So astrology is essentially this tool that helps you understand not only what time geography are you in archetypally, but where are you in the time wave, which to me equates to where are you in the story of archetypal evolution of our planet, of the galaxy, of every level of consciousness that is engaged in this dance. And so to me, that's just really mystical. It's really fascinating. And it kind of can help you make sense of the chaotic nature of being alive, because being alive is beautiful, but there is also an immense amount of pain that is just gonna hit you, as many times throughout the course of being a human. And I think that astrology is a tool that we use to make sense of the unfoldment of the highs, the lows, and everything in between. And so astrology is this tool that helps us understand archetypal time. And your birth chart is essentially a map, a snapshot of where you were in that archetypal time wave. And your body, your soul was coded with that snapshot of archetypal time. And so it gives you an understanding of how do you make sense of all of the archetypal, all of the planets in your birth chart give you a diagram of the archetypal energy of the time that you were born. And so your opportunity in this life is to cultivate yourself into the highest level of the archetypal synthesis of the timestamp that you were coded with when you were born through your birth chart. And so that is essentially what I was thinking about when I initiated myself into this Scorpio transformation spell, is that I can use my birth chart as something that is a living document of my soul's evolution over time. And that's why, as an astrologer, I advocate and make tools to help you understand how to download your birth chart into your awareness, so that it is available to you to contemplate as you move through the world, as you go through seasons of your life. You start to understand that every planet in your birth chart is almost like this archetypal board member of your psyche. It's a representation of different facets, different organs of your psyche. But it's also a map of your evolution and your growth, the human consciousness journey you are on in your own growth over the course of your lifetime into an individuated, sovereign creator being who can not only steward their biological growth steward the growth of their individuality. But when you lock into sovereign individual creatorship, you become able to contribute to the collective. And I think that is the highest opportunity that we all have in this life, is how can we take our authentic original geniuses that our birth chart avails to us and allows us and gives us a map of what we want to cultivate, but then how do we use the highest fruition of the cultivation of our individuality and donate that genius into service, put it to work into service for the collective, because that is how the human story of collective evolution will move in the most beautiful way through the time wave. And so, my astrological spell of, all right, let me initiate myself into the next highest level of all of the elements, all of the archetypes in my birth chart that my consciousness can hold right now. That was an opportunity to reach out to the universe and say, I want to ride the time wave. I want to use this spell as an attempt to ride the time wave, to like get on my surfboard and say, hey, I am going to practice, play with, initiate myself into the Scorpio archetype over the next year. The new moon being the beginning, where just like the rumblings of the spell are beginning. I'm contemplating my birth chart, but I have goals. I as I've participated and written my hero's story through my hero story birth chart discovery kit that you can all get in my store. I know what I'm working towards in building my business, in further developing my skills as an astrologer, and just coming into my voice. Recording this podcast is one of those things. And so I have 4 planets in Scorpio. So it's an archetype I've contemplated deeply. And all of them are in the 11th house, which is the house of the collective, being in groups. And how can it is exactly where you would activate your creativity in a collective sense. And so that's why for me, that all of that 11th house Scorpio energy is this nudge to me that really, as I'm transforming, I should be doing it publicly. I should be showing you how I actually move through trying to identify what is the next phase of my identity and how am I going to use my birth chart and then my personal natal transits, which are my personal cosmic weather that is showing me exactly from a day-to-day standpoint and a long-term development standpoint what cosmic seasons I'm in right now and how can I archetypally meet that growth with my foot forward. Cats are beefing in the background, in case you can hear it. So I'm going to get into exactly what's been going on with me. And I do this biographical exposition of what's been going on in my life because I want you to see how, you're going to see how well it works. In 3 months, we'll be at the full moon in Scorpio, and I will basically give you a reveal of everything I learned and how things are going out in my business and how things are coming to tangible form. But, this phase of my life isn't happening in a vacuum. I'm such an advocate of staying aware of your personal natal transits. And that's why you can get on my email list and get your full list of personal natal transits sent to you every day with custom interpretations, because this is how you practice riding the time wave. This is how you stay on your surfboard, because everything from the sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are telling you different things in your cosmic project plan, in your cosmic weather, about how to move on your surfboard as you play the time wave for your highest growth. And so in the last 2 years, I had a wild amount of big ass transits, big transits involving Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, and Saturn. And so I had my Pluto square Pluto transit that went on for almost 2 years. I had my Neptune square Neptune transit that went on for years. I was born right at the conjunction of Pluto and Saturn in 1982. So Pluto wasn't just squaring my Pluto, Pluto was squaring my Saturn as well. So it was this massive internal shift of my consciousness, calling me into my power, showing me where I wasn't in my power, blatantly, and just the cats are just out of control today. And I'm not even going to go over and like say shit to them. They can just work it out. But so the reason I felt ready to move into the next level of my identity through the Scorpio transformation spell was because for the last 2 years, like basically since 2021 through really, yeah, things got going in about early 2021 through 2024. I went through just so much consciousness shifting. I went through the process of building Starlight, which was just its own absolutely fantastical, wild experience. And it started happening when Uranus was opposite my 11th house and all of my Scorpio transits. So in the next year, I'll actually enter my Uranus opposition, which is a very fascinating transit that can be almost one of the most creative, revolutionary times in a visionary thinker's world, or it can really break down a lot of old crystallized structures in your life, depending on how conscious you are being to your own transformation. And so after Pluto squared my Pluto and Saturn and really not only showed me where I wasn't in my power, but gave me nudges of why it is important to come into my power, because it's not just for me. It's not just for the ancestral healing mission I've been on for years, but it is also so that I can be someone who can hold the radical responsibility of contributing to collective change. And that's going to be something that evolves and unfurls throughout the course of my life. It's not something I'm just going to tackle all right now, but you have to prepare for it over the course of your life, and you can't skip any steps. And I think that's kind of one thing that Pluto wants you to know, is that you cannot skip any steps when it comes to initiating yourself into your personal power. The cats just really don't want me to record this podcast, but I'm just doing it. And then Neptune square Neptune was this concurrent wild transit that millennials, if you're an elder millennial, you may have already finished it. And if you're kind of a younger millennial, then you're coming up to these two big transits that we all go through in our early 40s. Neptune being this oceanic planet, squaring itself is almost dissolving the boundaries of what you think you even want out of your dreams in this life, and happening concurrently with Pluto is like, well, if you really want to build your dreams, are you in a place of your personal power that you can actually bring that to fruition? And it basically shows you all of these things in this period during your early 40s so that you are prepared, so that you go through the consciousness transformation required to turn you into the person that can handle building your dreams as you move forward into your 40s. And so it's just, so that is kind of like what prepared me to get to this place where, now that Starlight is built and it's in beta and I'm truly coming into like my public identity as an astrologer, it's not just something I'm doing for fun in the background. It's something that I've gotten so much richness. Like I can't imagine going through the level of growth I've gone into, like not only building Starlight, but the entire experience of buying and building out my ranch and doing all of that work. I had to connect to my story, and I had to be motivated by the beauty of the potential of my story. And if I hadn't been connected to that, and I hadn't understood by following my personal natal transits, especially the big ass ones, I think I would have lost the plot. I would have gotten too lost in the sauce, and I wouldn't have had the contextual nuance of like why life was lifing so hard in any given fractal of my lived experience. And so that's why now, as I'm building out my business in terms of Starlight Astrology, is more than just the app, but the education and other tools that will help you go deeper and deeper in a way that's actually easy. Because for me, I had to spend years in study, years in like reading esoteric books that, trust me, you probably don't want to get into. And I'm using my technical knowledge, someone who spent years in the consulting industry, which I don't want to go back to, but I learned a lot in that phase of my life. So it was certainly not for nothing, but I want to put it to use in a way that can help people come into their own personal power through using astrology as a methodology for conscious transformation. But in order to get there, in order to find success in that realm, I'm having to go through an absolute washing machine of internal conscious transformation in my own body. And so that is what this square of the spell update is really about. So as we were talking about that, the square of the spell, it represents the first quarter moon, if you were looking at it from a 28-day lunation cycle, but it's 90 degrees away from where the spell started in Scorpio season. So the square of the spell was in Aquarius season, which I find to be so interesting because Scorpio as an archetype, it scuba dives its depths and it just looks through. And that's what was going on for me at the beginning of that spell, was just like understanding all of my darkness and how, it can create pain. But when you just can remember that every season has, it can't last forever. And so scuba diving to the depths, you can't stay down there forever. You're going to come back up to the surface. But if you can kind of, hold your presence and hold your peace when you're in the depths, you start to see why you have your shadows, and you can meet them, and then you can face them square up and say, what is this fear trying to teach me? And when you really meet it that way, then the fear starts to break down and say, okay, pass through to the next level of your initiation. And now that fear that you faced is now a power. It's like a source of personal power for you. And so as I've moved through this spell and I've now gotten to the square phase where I'm truly building systems in my business that will make it scalable, that will help me help way more people than just doing individual readings. And I'm using like my genius. I love to work with technology, and technology is getting cooler by the day. And there's a lot of, I feel like, anti-sentiment against AI in the astrology world. And I really don't feel that way because I have used AI to learn become a lifelong learner in so many different facets, and astrology as well. And I feel like as someone who loves to learn and gets so much joy out of my own process of learning, I want other people to experience that. And when you can learn about your astrology, I mean, really installing your birth chart in your mind and having it be there for you when you are in like figuring out like difficult situations in your life and understanding like, well, my Mars is in Cap, as I've built Star Ally, like building a custom software, friends, it is not an easy thing to do. It was one of the greatest tests I've ever moved through. And also holding on to my ranch and building it out and getting it ready for my mom, one of the toughest things I've ever gone through. That was, both of them actually were ancestral magic that I was doing because each of them has a different purpose. But I knew those were the kind of big actions, big risks I wanted to take, that I feel like I would be proud to explain to my ancestors why I pushed all my chips into the table for those two things. And as I was doing it, I relied on different archetypes within myself to say, I know I can do this. And so that's really what comes up for you when you're in a square phase, whether you're doing a spell about it or you are just in a big personal natal transit. That's a square, it's a building phase. And it's when you want to look into your deepest depths and say, where are my strengths? And how are they going to steal me through this process? How are they going to unlock wells of my own personal motivation to get through this so that I can be that one, be that link in the chain that builds new consciousness to the fruition point of the full moon, which is what I'm working towards in May when the moon is full in Scorpio. And so as I've been, getting my ads ready, like growing into using my throat chakra, showing up to record this podcast, showing up to record my little daily yaps and make reels and be on social media, which is something most Scorpios would just love to not be doing. But I realize in pushing myself through the resistance of doing that, I'm actually starting to love it. I'm actually starting to have a conversation with the universe. Even if not that many people are watching, that's irrelevant, because at this part of the spell, I'm using my own internal flame, internal resources to grow. And that's just something that feels really mystical. And in 5 years, nobody will ever be able to take this experience away from me. The power that I'm growing for myself now, it's never going away. And I think it will be instilled and built into the future of my ancestral line. And so that's why I give you these kind of biographical podcasts, is to show you that wherever you are experiencing deep challenge, you can do spells which basically become like promises to yourself that you're going to go through a growth phase. And a growth phase is part of a life cycle, and there are going to be parts that are beautiful and fun and feel really like juicy and like everything's flowing. That's like the trine phase. But but there's going to be phases that don't feel like that. You're going to want to quit so bad. But that's why then the full moon, knowing that the full moon exists, is your motivation. It's that magnetic illuminatory body that shows you the dream is going to be real if you put your energy into building it. And that's what the square phase is all about. And so that's what I've been going through, is like seeing how every, day I, get to work on my dream, and I feel the pull of the past, the pull of my comfort zone, saying, oh, I don't want to like show up to social media today, or, oh, I don't want to do all of the frankly quite annoying things that are required of entrepreneurs in order to build the goddamn business. Because my business is not just meant to support me financially and my family and all my catty waddies, but I have other businesses planned after this that are part of my grand cosmic plan to support the building of new consciousness and the seeding of new consciousness into the collective for the rest of my life. And so Starlight is, it's my favorite thing to do, truly. But even building something that's your dream, like, has so many parts where you're just like, I'd rather be on the couch. I'd rather go to lunch. But having the motivation of what that dream is what gets you through those cheese grater places where you're just like, oh, I want to sit down and quit. And it's really interesting, Aquarian energy, as it relates to being in, square to Scorpio energy. Scorpio energy is like so deep and like, almost drowning sometimes. And that's why I think sometimes people can't handle Scorpios, is because we just like don't want to stay on the surface. We're like deep as shit, and we want to like drag you into like, the beautiful drama of the story that we can see unfolding for humanity. And Aquarius energy is this alien, beautiful energy of like dreaming, of what the collective, could have if we democratized the beauty of new consciousness. But the shadow of it is that it can kind of dissociate when shit gets real, because it wants to think in this collective way. But when the work has to be done, sometimes Aquarian energy can shy away from that and just want to kind of like go off into a dream world. And so, my Aquarius in my chart is in the third house of communication. So this kind of season, I've truly been finding, how can I show up to communication? How can I continue finding ways to use all of this, beautiful, crazy technology that we have to communicate across the planet, across the globe, to all the brotherhood and sisterhood of humanity in ways that, is frankly brand new in humanity, since Instagram's only like 10 years old. But obviously there's a lot of parts where you're just like, like it's uncharted territory. And that is really kind of, I would say, like the hallmark of moving through a square phase, is that it's uncharted territory for your consciousness. And you got to meet the past, and you got to say, I'm not going to let you keep me here, because it's my responsibility for future generations, for myself, for all the generations that have come behind me, that I'm standing on their shoulders to build my dream, to do the damn thing for everyone. And the gratification that I know is waiting for me when I hit the full moon of this spell and then enter the waning phase of this spell in the next 6 months is going to be like irreplaceable. like absolutely irreplaceable. So yeah, that's why astrology is just this fascinating tool of understanding the archetypal waves of energetic time, the buildup of energy and the release and the breakdown periods of energy. And so practically, I am coming into my voice in this square phase. I am continuing to build an aligned business that is really designed to be in service of the entire collective in a scalable, digital, radically innovative way. I'm using my discernment to kind of meet some of the astrological community that doesn't quite agree with using astrology for AI, and say, from my discerned point of view, I'm gonna follow my intuition and build tools that can democratize people becoming utilizers of their own astrological awareness, because that's one of, like, you can get a reading with me for an hour and a half and we can go through your chart, but it's going to be a lot more worth your money if I allow you to use my very low cost tool to use AI to go through your own birth chart self discovery process. And then you come meet with me and we're speaking the same language. You know where you want to go into that, deep dive of your birth chart. So I don't feel like by building an AI powered astrology software and tools that use AI to help you learn about how to use your own astrology, I'm not putting any astrologer out of business. What I'm creating is a community of people who are skilled up on understanding their astrology and are more empowered to use it. So that's all part of this square spell where you're like, like giving yourself permission to not listen to some of the negativity that past patterns have installed in you, and you are using your intuition and your own internal flame and your own fuel to move towards building the damn thing and building the dream. So that's kind of like the practical stuff of what I'm doing, is I'm just like showing up to build my business every day, even through the sticky hard parts that I would rather be on the couch or doing something that's easier. So I'm moving into the fear, I'm moving into the resistance, knowing that this is the best gym I could be in. What's happening on the subconscious level? Because I talk about all the time, install your birth chart in your mind so that you understand who are the leadership archetypal positions represented by each planet that also represent different facets of your psyche. When we understand our psyche, we understand our energy, we can tune our energy from shadow to gift to superpower, and we can start to synthesize all of that, and we know like how we move. And so then we react less to situations on a day-to-day, and we respond more, and we're connecting it to our story. So that I've been practicing that for years as an astrologer, and it gets more fun and more mystical every day. But so that's the birth chart side of understanding the energetic makeup of your psyche. But how does your consciousness change over time? How do you stay in the river of your own change? That is where personal natal transits are just the most fascinating tool that I think there ever was. And obviously, get on my email list. You can get your personal natal transit sent to you every damn day. Get into Starlight. It has the deepest personal natal transit portal ever. It interprets every single one. It explains them to you. It gives you a deep dive interpretation of each personal natal transit through the lens of your birth chart. You can journal on them. It's fascinating. But so I have a couple, I mentioned at the, in the beginning of this podcast that I've gone through in the last few years, some big personal natal transits like Pluto square Pluto, Neptune square Neptune, Uranus opposite my 11th house where I have 4 planets. Huge subterranean shifts of my consciousness were going on, and they were wild. And I know that it was easier and made a lot more sense, and the experience was way more beautiful because I understood the archetypal lessons that were coming at me. And I learned over time to stop resisting. I mean, there were a couple times where I really did want to be like, and resist. But I, at the end of the day, I didn't. And I'm really proud of myself for that. And I want that for you. And so that's kind of like a look towards what was, I understand what was preparing me to get to this point, because I would not have been able to hold the responsibilities that are in my hand right now if I hadn't gone through the shifts of the last 2 to 3 years and the whole, my entire life. But now that I'm in this transformational key spot in this square of my Scorpio transformation spell, I'm having another multitude, another lasagna layer stack of transits that are really the key signatories of the lessons I need to show up to right now. And so what are they? I'm going to, again, be biographically transparent with you because I want to inspire you to know that you can do stuff like this in your own life. You can move through huge transformations that move you towards the golden top of the mountain peak of your story with context, with nuance, like making the story make sense for you rather than you just, because if the things that have happened in my life over the last few years didn't make any sense to me, I would have like broken down and like crumbled into a ball. But because I knew why they were happening, I was able to like stand with like core strength and like dig down deep and do the damn thing. So, what's going on for me right now? Well, Mars retrograde in Cancer, everybody has probably been feeling like they've been trying to like move through quicksand, has been trining all of my Scorpio placements in the 11th house. And so it's slowed me down in some areas, but what it's allowed me to contemplate, because Mars in Cancer is moving through my 8th house, trining my 11th house, and it's been like, well, why do you want to do all this? Mars in retrograde has also been conjunct my North Node. My North Node is in Cancer. And so, and it's been opposite my South Node in Capricorn. And so it's been really forcing me to deeply contemplate why I'm moving on the storyline that I'm moving on. And, big shifts in my, like my resource world, like I'm making investments into my business in a way that could make me nervous to put money into where I'm investing it, to build my tools and to promote my tools. But because it's training my Scorpio placements, I truly understand that as an 11th house transformer, this is like the tightrope I want to walk. I want to build tools that help masses of people become transformers. And so by Mars showing me that, like, if you're going to do this work, you want to understand why you're doing it. And I know that Mars is going to move to Leo in a few months. And by that point, I will have moved out of the square of the spell and I'll be in the trine phase. And so Mars, when it's direct, Mars, when it moves into Leo, that's going to be a phase where I can really start to show off like everything that I've been building, not from an egotistical standpoint, but from a point of, my moon is in Leo in the 9th house. I want everyone to be able to experience higher learning of their souls. And that is why I build these tools. Jupiter in Gemini is sitting right on my descendant in my 7th house of Gemini. And it is opposite my Sagittarius rising, and it's opposite my Neptune in Sagittarius, because those are almost conjunct for me. And so what's fascinating about that is it's activating an expansion of people I meet and grow in my network to do business with. So I've been going on podcasts. I've been connecting with people in the astrological space. And it's also been in a full moon aspect, opposite to my, my Sagittarius rising. And it's like saying, like, let's like have the full integration of you wanting to be a Sagittarius rising, this person who gets so fired up about dreaming into the collective potentiality of what could be real for human consciousness. If Capricorn energy comes and builds the dream, and then Aquarius comes and democratizes the dream. So it's just been like a big period of like expansion, but also like really making sure that I confront with consciousness, like, who is the real version of Kathryn as a Sagittarius rising. And as that has been happening, Saturn in Pisces, Saturn has just been screeching at the slowest pace through Pisces for the last few years. And Saturn in Pisces in general has been this experience for people. Like, I had Saturn conjuncting my IC in my 4th house for a long time. But Saturn now trining my Scorpio placements. Saturn in Pisces is this energy of like, how do you find your own structure through uncertainty? Because Pisces is this sign of, like oceanic merging with the all, merging with the collective, but you can almost become so Neptunianly dissociated from reality that you like float off into space. And so, Saturn bringing that energy of structure there is saying, how do you maintain your own boundaries, your own sense, like, can you have structure in your own world that can hold you through uncertain times? And that has certainly been very present in my world as I've moved through this phase of business building. And having it trine my Scorpio placements, it's really just showing me like it is so important to me to do this 11th house Scorpio work. And I would say that is, 11th house Scorpio energy is so much at the foundation of what Star Ally astrology means to me. And so also I have had Pluto, and as Pluto moved into Aquarius, when Pluto was in Capricorn, it was squaring my natal Pluto in Libra. But now that Pluto has moved into Aquarius, it is sextiling my natal Uranus and Sagittarius, and it's third house energy for me, because for me in my chart, Aquarius is where my third house sits. And so this is revolutionary communicative energy. This is like, girl, you better get your throat chakra open as fuck and use it for the collective. And so that has just been fascinating to contemplate, because when a big personal natal transit, when the wave starts to roll up to you, the archetypes help you understand the shape of the wave. But you're not going to really feel what that wave feels like until your surfboard is screaming down the face of the wave and you are on it. So this transit has kind of just begun for me in the last few weeks, and I'm just learning to like make its acquaintance. And that is often how personal natal transits go, big personal natal transits. And if you are someone who's interested in being a witch, doing magic, transforming your consciousness, if you're a light worker, your personal natal transits are your absolute best friends and allies in understanding how to move with energy, how to manifest with fine precision, how to manifest with accountability and integrity. And so lastly, as the lunar nodes have moved into Pisces, North Node and Virgo South Node, I did a podcast all about that. I have my IC in Pisces and my MC in Virgo. So the nodes for the next 18 months are going to be right on my vertical axis of power. So my IC in the fourth house in Pisces is like my deep roots of ancestral commitment. I'm feeling that happen a lot. That energy is very strong for me. And like coming into your practical mysticism, that was kind of like the keynote of what I feel like the Pisces Virgo axis is it's like, how do you come into your inner mystic, but how do you ground it with Virgo energy? Not going too hard into the paint of the critical, overly analytical nature of Virgo, learning to like let go of that comfort zone that a lot of us can feel in Virgo energy, but allowing the Virgo grounding, the Virgo healing to really be those roots that allow us to kind of let ourselves go into this ethereal exploration of our inner mystic through Piscean energy. And so I feel like for me, that really makes a lot of sense as I go into like, what more practical mystic business venture could you be launching than a software application and business that allows people to explore their own astrology? But I have to be very practical about how I go about this, because all of this is being independently built. I don't have investors, and I'm choosing not to get investors because I want to make sure that the design decisions and the build decisions and the functionality we build and the ethos of the entire business comes from my integrity, And so it makes it a lot harder and slower, and it is testing me to the max. But that is what riding the time wave with the context of your personal natal transits in your birth chart can be. It's like you can actually get tested to the max, but you know that you were built for it. Your intuition gets confirmed because you are seeing the storyline of the time wave, and it's really beautiful thing. It's really deeply mystical. It's deeply gratifying. As a child, I never could have imagined getting to have this experience. And, I did a little Instagram yap a few weeks, or maybe it was like 2 months ago, where I was like, the point in the spell where nobody knows about it, like you have not gotten the external recognition yet, but you are powering it through your internal magic, is so fucking magic, because you could quit at any time and the dream wouldn't happen. And that's really also what the square of a spell is about. Is it's the time when your comfort zone is screaming at you to quit the loudest. But if you know that you are built for it, you then get to meet your internal seat of energy, that the sun within your own body, the sun within your soul that powers that seed to break out of its casing, shove itself through the dirt and up into the sun. And if you make it through that process, you're going to hit the trine. You're going to hit the trine of the spell, where it's like, girl, you built enough. You got the seed out of the soil, and now the sun is shining on it and you have help. The energy has inertia to keep going. And so that is what has gotten me through the square of the spell. I'm not quite out of it, but I'm going to be hitting that trine pretty soon. And so that is a feeling that just, I don't even have words for it. I'm so excited to hit the full moon in Scorpio and really show you how everything came into its illumination. And I tell you these stories, and I tell you the transits I've been going through, so that you can understand that you can get all of this information in the tools that I build, in the education I'm producing. And I'm so excited to release the Star Align Method, which I've started work on, and I'm going to start to release that in the next few weeks and months, which is a full course on how to use astrology for personal transformation, for like seriously evolving your consciousness and becoming an alchemist of your being, of your story, of identifying what your hero's story is, what you came to do in this life, and to actually push your chips all the way into the middle of the table and live it, so that when you take your last breath, when you were an old woman or an old man, you knew that you like did it. Your soul did what it came to do in this lifetime. And I truly feel like, even though there's days that I'm just like, oh, and I'm like, God, this is hard. But knowing what I know, thanks to astrology, there's no fucking way I'm giving up. So that's my story for this week. And thank you for sticking with me if you listened this long. And as I typically say, I just can't wait to see all the magic you can do. So, toodles. Until next time.